Hey, Gabby. Do you want
Hey
to
there.
test? Do you want? How are
C-
you?
can you hear me fine?
Yep. It works well. It works well. We just have 1 minute away, so you're very punctual. How are you doing, though?
Very good. Back in Singapore.
Nice. You've been traveling quite a bit lately, right?
Yeah, I've been to Japan. It was really excellent to see how Web3 is shaping up there. And then I was in the Philippines for one of our events a couple of weeks ago.
Cool. I think we are about to start, but let's give everyone some time to join. We've gotten a lot of people. We didn't incentivize this whole AMA, but we received quite a few interesting questions about YGG and the
Nice.
potential collab. But yeah,
Caldi's hearting me, so I have to heart him back.
those are very friendly questions for what it's worth. I guess you guys are doing a fairly awesome job, and I'm sure people would be interested in hearing more about the global kind of exposure that you guys had. But yeah, I think we are right at the clock, and I think we can start. Before we start, I think it will be helpful for me to maybe provide a few words about what YGG is. Obviously, I'm sure everyone wanted to hear from Gabby himself, but Yo-Yo Games YGG is the world's first and biggest Web3 gaming guild, where players can enrich themselves as they find their community, discover games, and level up together. So, as a decentralized network of gaming guilds focused on blockchain games and Web3 education, YGG is committed to provide opportunities for its members to achieve success in the open metaverse. So here we go. Let's welcome Gabby Dizon, from CEO and founder of YGG. Hi, Gabby. How are you?
Hey, thanks for having me, Mabel. It was great hanging out with you in Japan as well.
Likewise. It was definitely great seeing you in person after this many years. It's
Finally.
funny.
That's right.
Exactly. Yeah, so maybe to kick off, would love to have you introduce yourself, the background to our audience. Some of them may be, quite familiar with you, but I'm sure there are more people who are willing to know you.
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in the Philippines. I've been a game developer for around 20 years. So I was part of the team that created the first ever game out of the Philippines in 2003. So that was my entry into the game industry. And I started making casual games and PC, move on to mobile games. And when I started my mobile game company, it was 2014. So we were making free to play games. And I would say that we did okay as a free to play game developer, and mostly because I felt that we were a little bit too late to the industry. Free to play started in mobile. Candy Crush, Clash of Clans came out around 2010. And by the time that we were in, started our studio in 2014, it was actually much harder to get to break into the industry. And like we did okay, we started working with different like top tier publishers. But at the back of my mind, I've always felt like I wanted to be early to what would happen in next in the game industry. Every 10 years or so, there's like technological change that ushers in new change in the game industry. So after console, it was like PC shareware games, and then Steam ushered digital downloads, and then after that was mobile free to play, which brought on new winners. And I felt like I wanted to be early for what would come next. And yeah, that's how I found crypto and blockchain in 2017 by way of Ethereum. And when I heard about the concept of smart contracts, I thought it was magic. Here you are, you can program real value um, into basically using code. And we were already creating economies inside of games, right? Like you have different types of currencies that you pay for in a game. You can earn it via playing. You exchange gems for wood or lumber, or buy units. So it was kind of natural for me to think that you could use Ethereum to be able to program real value inside of games. So that was what got me into the crypto rabbit hole. And a few months later, in November 2017, CryptoKitties came out. They didn't invent NFTs, but they popularized the term non-fungible token. They crushed the Ethereum network at that time, and I was like, wow, holy shit, this Ethereum NFTs are what's going to change the game industry. So I really kind
I remember back in the days, like there's this Solidity curriculum that teach you how to code. Was it
yeah,
like a zombie thing, or
yeah, Crypto
do you
Zombies
remember?
by Loom
That was
Network.
on
Yeah, that was how we learned
Loom,
Solidity,
Loom,
actually.
Loom.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Exactly. I was thinking that. So it's how funny it is that people, leverage still like game and casual stuff to kind of learn. So I thought that was quite interesting. So you mentioned that discovered NFT and kind of how and why did you start YGG? I mean, I think you started probably somewhere around 2020 or
Yeah,
2019. I
it
don't
was
remember.
actually 2020. So I was playing with NFTs. We created our own NFT game that sadly didn't get a lot of traction. But I was also part of the early Axie community in 2018. Met co-founders Jiho and Psych Out in the conference circuit. I became part of the Axie community and really just started playing with it. When started breeding Axies, just uh, yeah, trying to figure out like breeding to get the optimal traits. Axie had improved on the CryptoKitties breeding model by adding an auto battle part to the game. So that made it more interesting. And Axie did something which was interesting is that in the problem with CryptoKitties breeding was that you can breed as much as you wanted. So the population of cats basically got ahead of like the demand of the humans who wanted to have these kitties. And what Axie did was that they introduced a token that you had to earn by battling and winning, so that you would have the right to breed Axie. So this is called the SLP, or now the Smooth Love Potion token. So people know it as kind of the catalyst of play to earn, but the reality of it is that it was actually a proof of play token. You needed SLP to be able to breed your axes to create new ones so that it would control the population of axes. And because the SLP itself is tokenized, then if you earn your SLP, you can basically give it or sell it to other people. And that was how I learned to use Uniswap and how I learned such concepts as being able to use liquidity provisioning in Uniswap, pairing SLP and ETH, earning a little bit of money off that. And because of that, I, along with a lot of early members of the Axie community, got the Uniswap Uni token airdrop. So that was really magical time where we were using these games, learning new concepts, new primitives, and using it to learn DeFi as well.
I thought it was funny you mentioned that. I remember in the early days that when we did step in, and then people who were in deep in Solana DeFi is like, what is this GMT token on Orca? And then like it was actually what first time for a lot of people in the community who first time using AMM on top of Solana. So it's quite cool. So when you started YGG, obviously maybe it started with some with some other different vision, but how is it different from now when you originally started it? I'm curious.
When you describe what YGG is earlier at the start, the vision actually
Ah.
remains the same. Of course, we've had
Mm.
to evolve in the 3 years that we've been around, almost 3 years. So we started by doing the Axie lending, or what's known as the scholarship program, breeding Axies, and then lending it out to people who wanted to play the game. Now we're creating different kinds of products to help people experience different kinds of Web3 games. So one of the things that we're doing, one of the products we're making is a platform called SuperQuest, which we are launching by next week. So SuperQuest is a quest system that gets you deep into a game where you have to perform certain tasks. There's an educational part that is taught by content creators. And then you have to finish these quests. Then you get a Soulbound token NFT achievement that shows forever that you completed this quest. So you see, achievements are a very big part of our philosophy and Web3 reputation in general. because I think that it would serve crypto more long term to really for users to really care about their on-chain reputation. A lot of DeFi cares more about liquidity than everything else, but I think long term, reputation is very important. If you can show, if you can attest that you've contributed to some community in some way, whether it's playing a game, being a top player, being a helpful community member, then you should be able to get offers from other games or other protocols, other DAOs, because they want your kind of profile to be part of their community, right? So yeah, that's a big part of what we're doing now.
Yeah, so actually you pointed out a very interesting change, right? So like over these years you built YGG. So what trend did you observe that happened to the users who are playing and engaging in these games that leverage blockchain tech? I'm sure this adjustment for you guys from, starting from scholarship, now like kind of focusing more on the quest related things, there must be also a change to the profile of these users. So who are these people? Why are they here?
Yeah, definitely. The user base has gone up and down in the last couple of years, and at the very beginning, a lot of it were like very early crypto enthusiasts that wanted to play these games. As the prices of crypto went up, then a lot of people were around that, I would say, kind of more financially driven, like they wanted to make money from playing games. And as the prices have gone down, a lot of these people were just here to make money playing games have gone. And what you're left with is a smaller community, but much larger than before when we started in 2020, of people who actually care about what kind of being part of a Web3 community, what having a Web3 reputation can do for you. What I would say is the same is that they still want to use Web3 to be able to be part of like a global virtual economy, which means that like Web3 doesn't matter if you're in the Philippines or in Kenya or in the US. You should have equal opportunity to take part in whatever opportunities there are, right? So that part hasn't changed. But I think people are now more, I would say, circumspect, and they are aware that you really have to give value to be able to receive value. So people are really helpful to the community. They help onboard other people, teach the basics of crypto, and they understand that we're not here simply just to make, to make quick money, right?
Oh, are you done? Okay, sorry, I wasn't sure. I think you mentioned on the user side of things, but I think this structural change also has something to do with what games are available on the market. So I was curious about your observation on, generally what kind of games are around over these years, and how the change look like from your angle, given that you're always on the consumer side of things.
Yeah, so there's been an incredible change in the games in the last 2 years. By the way, I want to say hi to my good friend Pierce, who's over here. He's seen a lot of these games come and go in the last 2 years as well. But in general, so after Axie made it big, what we saw first are a lot of fast follow Axie clones that had a slight change, but essentially had the same business model. Most of those games have washed away, but more importantly, what we saw after the success of Axie 2 years ago was that there's a lot of other games that came in and did some really good innovations to kind of the blockchain gaming model. Honestly, Steppen is one of those. I think you guys have done an incredible job with Steppen. I'm really looking forward to what you'll be doing with Gas Hero. But yeah, now we see a lot more interesting titles that are built by experienced developers with kind of thoughtful iterations on how token utility would work, how NFTs would work, and how the virtual economy inside the game would work. Honestly, I don't think anyone has nailed down the formula yet for how these things would work, but I'm certain that we're going to see some breakout hit titles within the next year.
Very nice. I'm sure you're hinting Gas Hero. I'm just kidding. But like the formula you were just saying is like something that we kind of like to emphasize to our community, which is like you're essentially playing within this impossible triangle of power, fame, and money. obviously like someone who wants to play an upper kind of scale in the game, like you might not care as much about the money, more caring about the governance that you can provide to other people, the kind of power and fame, the feeling of those experiences. So I think that's definitely interesting to explore. So talking about this topic, I was curious, like, how would the players be better off with YGG, like when they're playing games that emphasize on a social and collaborative aspect?
A lot of different games that like we're not one guild. We call ourselves a guild of guilds. So there's actually a lot of different games that our community is interested in. We've had a DAO around also a SLG game called League of Kingdoms, and that's been going since January 2021. So around 2.5 years already. We have DAOs around games like Splinterlands as well. We have player groups around Illuvium. Yeah, a lot more actually. If you go into our Discord, there's a lot of games that people are very interested in, and typically we like to look for player ambassadors who really kind of champion the game within the YGG community, and then they're the ones that kind of lead what YGG does within those communities. Recently, we've had a new guild spring up out of our community called Guild House, and this is a hardcore like MMORPG raiding guild. So they've been present in games like the Metapixels game, Grand Saga. So yeah, so a lot of people like different types of games, which means that there's something for everyone. And then on top of that, YGG has assets and usually partnerships with a lot of these games. So oftentimes you don't have to play with your own assets, or YGG may own something like land or castles or just items in a game for people to use as well, which means that they may not necessarily have to own any of those assets to play these games.
Out of curiosity, like, do you organize people to say like go into a championship or some sort of like that? Meaning like maybe a group of people all in Philippines or all in like one same country, and then you actually just team up and then discuss strategies and just go into these games together.
So this happens in a lot of areas, not just the Philippines. We have guilds all over, very strong guilds across Southeast Asia, India, Latin America. We have YGG in Japan, SkyDG in Korea. So yeah, so the players are all over, and the games that they like to do vary. But I guess the highest activity for us still remains the Philippines.
I see. So then like people who say like form a sub, do you have such a thing called sub guild?
Sub guild, many
Yeah,
many.
so
Yeah,
like
actually, yeah,
ah.
we have dozens and dozens of sub guilds for sure.
Yeah, I was gonna say, so like they would say for people who are like organizing these, they may like not only just guide people to play the games, but also maybe teach people onboarding and all of things, other things like that, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. One of our sub guilds called Synergy just did an
Mm,
onboarding session in one of the cities in the province in the Philippines, where they got 300 people from their city to learn about like basics of crypto, so that they could take part in what we call our guild advancement program, or a series of quests where people can go into games to get achievements, and it's also the primary way that we're distributing the YGG token. So to have ownership of the YGG token, to be part of YGG's economy, we prefer active contribution into our guild. So we've actually stopped a lot of our kind of yield farming rewards. And now if you want to earn YGG instead of buying it, you basically have to go into our community, either play these games as part of with YGG, or do tasks that are helpful to the community, whether you're streaming or you're a community helper, you're a moderator, esports player.
that's super interesting. So, like the reason I was asking this question is because in our previous AMA that introduces Gas Hero, we talked about how the structure of this world look like, which start from base and then goes up to clan and then guild and then district, city. And then we kind of guided people that like they have to make strategic choices which city they would like to land. Some of those are very populous, but then it's going to be very competitive, right? On the other hand, there might be cities in the game that are less less sparse. So then, sorry, like people are located more sparsely, so that there's less competition, but obviously with less resources as well. And then like at the same time, we encourage people to maybe like go to the same base together so that they can collaborate with each other. So it sounds like the structure that YGG and all these sub guilds can provide can be a good option for some of these people who are interested in having a group to kind of try.
Oh yeah, it's definitely right up our alley.
I see. So for what it's for all of these audiences, wanted to make sure one thing. Gabby and I, we actually never spoke about having people like participate in YGG to kind of join Gas Hero, but I think this can definitely be an opportunity for you to explore if you are interested. So this is absolutely an interesting idea, because I just want to say, like, for people who wanted to collaborate with other people and team up, you can not only be better off maybe like in teamwork within the game, but also you can get some YGG tokens. So I think that's definitely an interesting component here. And I'm like up to the next question. I actually wanted to learn a little bit more about the relationships among the games that you work with. I wasn't sure if there's any synergy, but do they share any reputation and credentials across the games?
Not really yet across the games. So right now we do have our own achievement system that we issue, but like we are considering down the line, once our progression system is more laid out, if we're able to also import achievements from existing game ecosystems. For example, I always talk about Axie because we started working with them first, but now they have a whole Ronin chain ecosystem of different games. So now cross-game achievement sounds more interesting, or even cross-game quests, right? So if you completed a quest in one game and get an achievement in that game, maybe you can go to game 2 where the requirement to go into that. And that sort of stuff makes it really interesting when, yeah, you really start going.
Like, oh, for the wallet addresses that have certain, I don't know, like badges or proof of something in the past, like they would like to, do some activation around those. Are those common? Because I felt like that's just the easy way of like acquiring new users. Sorry, a new, like already existing active users.
Not yet, but I think that we're getting there now that we've issued like over 1,000 achievements. I think it's starting to get there where, yeah, you can take a look at our community and see what games they're playing, what achievements they have, and you can basically say for those that have this kind of achievement, then you get like you get a reward when you enter my game. So honestly, you could do this with Gas Hero, targeting like different strategy games as well, right?
Absolutely, very interesting. And I think another important thing that I pointed out from the beginning during when I was reading through the overview and intro was that like YGG is the largest and the most global ones. So I was curious about like the relationship among all the regional chapters of YGG. Like how does it work when, say, like YGG decides to support a game that aims to expand globally?
So each of our regional sub-guilds do operate independently. Usually we've invested in these guilds like WeGG for Southeast Asia, IndieGG for India, OLA for Latin America. That said, there's a very local flavor in what games their community likes to play. Often there are different languages involved, so they have the kind of day-to-day flexibility to basically do what they want. Having said that, they're still part of the whole YGG ecosystem. So when a game comes to us and says, we want to introduce our game to players around the world, then we have the opportunity to tap our guild partners and basically introduce the game to them so that games are able to roll out and gain awareness for their product globally.
But then like I guess like curious out of that, like so like the local chapters. I think you and I chatted, but I'm sure like the audience will be interested as well. The local chapters they operate by themselves.
Yeah, they're independent units, and we designed it this way because it's really hard to build community around the world, and we felt like building it from the ground up is better than top down. Like if you're expanding as a company, right, then you go top down, open offices in different countries, hire your managers, and we kind of did it from the bottom up. We partnered with guilds that are very close to the ground, know who their community is, and we have a working relationship. We have an investment in them, but they still operate independently because they know exactly what their community wants. So that's why we're designed that way, which means I can't exactly tell each sub guild what to do. But it also means that they know exactly what their community wants.
Oh, that's an interesting way of putting it. I actually thought if like across because like going back to how Gastro was designed, so then I think if someone who wants to say like form some sort of association across two different regions and then actually collaborate with guilds across two different regions, I think this structure can start to become interesting because obviously you can establish that connection, but at the same time like they're also like independently operating.
Yeah. Actually, I'm really interested in the structure of Gas Hero because it seemed like it maps really well to how we've thought of the structure of our Web3 guilds.
Yeah, so followed by that question, have you guys ever worked with any SLG before? Like the simulation strategy game?
For strategy games, I think the longest that we work with is a game called League of Kingdoms. So
Mm.
it functions somewhat similar to Clash of Clans. There's a bunch of lands, you have bases, then you have different guilds that form, and it's kind of a Web 2 to Web 3 game, which means that you can play it without any crypto or any wallet. It's available in the app stores actually since 2 years ago, but for the spending that comes on top of the land that you own. For example, someone spends money on a land that you own, part of the spending goes to the player in form of their token. So it incentivizes people to kind of build out their bases more so that more economic activity happens there, more spending happens there. And then there's rewards for different events that happen in different continents, like guild versus guild battles, for example. So yeah, so
Mm.
we do have a very lively community around that. And I mean, I think our community would be interested to see other SLG games as well.
So, like, are there any key advice for you, sorry, from you for the game designers coming from a guild operator's perspective? Because like you have a very large
Okay.
user sample, like you would give when it comes to like game operation and design for these SLGs.
Well, what we've seen successful is that when there's a different variety of roles for guild members to do, then a game tends to do better, which means that, for example, if a game is mainly focused on leaderboard battling, then only the top people in the leaderboard may get rewards, and it may disincentivize people who are kind of at the bottom of that leaderboard. But there's many other ways to provide value to a community rather like apart from being a top player. And this is actually something that kind of organically happened within the Axie community at the start. There were people who were playing the game. There were people who were breeding Axies. There were people who were kind of managing these like scholarships. There were people who were playing the economic game. And then there were people who were streaming. There are people who were doing esports. And so there are different jobs for people, and there's different ways for them to get fulfillment apart from just being a great player. Like, for example, I myself am a good player. I'm not a great player, but I like the economic metagame of these games, which is probably why I started YGG in the first place. So yeah, so it's a lot more fulfilling when there's different roles for people to do.
That's definitely very interesting. Um, so I was actually curious, maybe like you touched upon that a little bit earlier, but like, on the sub-guild front, like maybe can you tell us some more about like the interactions inside these sub-guilds? are like? Like, do they hang out with each other offline, or are they mostly internet friends? I'm curious about this because like we are seeing a lot of local communities organized organically from Stepin community. And like one thing that we felt very proud is that the social component for Stepin actually came from the offline perspective. So curious about like these guilds, like do people actually become friends in life, and then like how do they usually collab when it comes to like playing a game?
Oh yeah, we've seen this a lot in the Philippines. Like if you take a look at one of our sub guilds, which is YGG Philippines, it's actually made
Mm-hmm.
up of dozens and dozens of like sub guilds, and then they go together, but they have the unique identity of their sub guilds. So we actually introduced in March a concept called guild runes, which is like a logo for your own guild, and then we'll be doing something that will allow people to express their unique guild identity in an on-chain way. That's all I'm going to tease for now. But yeah, if you look at it, there's actually a lot of like different guild identities within YGG, and unique identities as a group on chain.
I see. Very interesting. Okay. And then you also mentioned that battling events, and then at the end, like maybe there's like huge rewards. Because like we see this kind of thing happening a lot in those MMOs in the traditional world. So I was curious about that.
Yeah, so last year we held a physical event called Axie Open Manila, where
Mm.
the total prize pool was, I think, somewhat in the area of like $200,000, probably a little bit under that, but yeah, it was pretty significant amount. And we're probably going to hold more tournaments again. I think that for Web3 games, the IRL events, tournament meetups really enhance the kind of like social activity. So I think they're great. It's really energizing for me to see people online or see people in real life that I've been talking to online on Discord, on Twitter, whatever. So yeah, so the events have been really great for us to kind of bring our community closer.
Yeah, actually, that inspired us because I think while like the game level wide, like like the game designer can obviously do something around that, but I think if someone is like running a really large city, and then that mayor within the game really wants to incentivize his like the sentiment of the people in the city, I think that could be a really interesting thing to do. So that I think like it's gonna be very interesting to see, like kind of look forward to for the next 12 months when it comes to, like the combination of offline IRL event versus like the actual in-game kind of prize pool. So
I'm
definitely
sure you have like step and running groups around the world, right?
that too, but you don't have a prize pool for that. I think adding another layer for
That's
that
right.
will be extremely interesting. Yeah, you have a good point. Like we do a lot of offline events, like running in Central Park or running, I don't know, like somewhere in Paris. Like they do that all the time. And even I think some of them are in Vietnam. Like we have global ambassador running all of those things. So yeah, like IRL events, it's fine, but I think adding like, actual offline kind of environment, people battling there, I think it's going to be even more interesting.
Maybe we should
Yeah.
set up like step and running tournaments so that we can get Web3 communities healthier.
Okay, that's a good idea. I think our I wasn't sure our PM for Stepin is sitting down there, but if he did, like I'll make sure he heard this. Thanks for the advice. I wanted to maybe like pivot a little bit and talk about the like Apple like recent changes. One on the one hand, we are seeing like Axie Infinity getting into App Store, and Stepin supporting a P2P in-app purchase service. But on the other hand, I think there are many apps who are struggling getting into app stores, especially for iOS, Apple. Um, how do you feel about all of these, and where do you see all these go?
Right. So I think that it's been a little bit clearer on the Google Play side than the iOS side. Google Play has made it really clear that like you have to tell your users that there are NFTs inside the game and not to hide them, not hide the fact that there are NFTs. I think we're getting clarity when it comes to the regulations on the Google Play side. I do really like what you're doing in Steppen, where people can buy shoes using in-app purchases, but at the back they're actually marketplace selling. Like there's actually a person on the other side selling, but you kind of mask that liquidity, right? And you're able to get the player to buy in real time. So I think that's really cool. And yeah, I do think that Google at least has embraced the fact that these kind of games are here to stay, and they're also legitimate innovations that should support and move the industry forward. And honestly, I think Apple will kind of get around to it, probably just a little bit later than Google.
Yeah, I think on the other hand, I mean, adding to what you said, I think all of these like much easier onboarding mechanism, like EIP 4337, or even just like either the full account abstraction wallet, or even some of them maybe using MPC wallet that you only rely on email and then logging in. So like, it may make it easy for people to kind of like log in from a web standpoint, rather than if you can't really like say get an approval from Apple and then waiting for 6 or 12 months, right? Like that just doesn't make sense. So I think with all of these much easier onboarding mechanism, it's definitely getting easier for people to access all of these mobile based games. And I think that's really where we can go forward for mass adoption. So that's definitely going to be something we'll look forward. And last time when you were in Japan, sorry, you were going to say something?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, like last time in Japan, you mentioned that many games are going live towards the end of this year. I was curious about like what are some of those genres?
Oh, we're seeing just a bunch of games that have been in development for the last, I would say, 18 to 24 months, going live from like towards the end of the year and to next year. There's a lot of innovation happening in Asia, I would say. I'm like there's a lot of Korean games that are looking to launch. A lot of Japanese games. I would say the Japanese are a little bit later when it comes to getting into Web3, but when they go in it, they have full conviction. So we talk to a lot of Japanese companies, and even the big ones like Square Enix and the Segas of the world. They are doing some kind of Web3 integration into some of their games. Don't expect it to be in their largest titles, in their largest IP, but they're all very looking forward to these games. So across many genres, you'd expect it to be in like SLG across our role-playing games, but you also see racing, for example, is very popular. You're starting to see some like more casual titles come in as well. So it's really coming from a bunch of different genres from a lot of experienced teams.
Talking about that, I think it's funny that you mentioned like Square Enix and Sega and even like Bandai Namco, all of these like. So we were like also. So I was in Japan a lot lately over the past 2 3 months, and I was in touch with many of them. So I thought it was funny that you mentioned that don't expect to be the top titles for some of these companies because like they're all like very conservative. But I think at the same time like they are trying to license their IP out and just maybe to be like one of the skins or just co-branded things to kind of get one of their feet into the water and see how it goes, and then being very conservative. So I think generally speaking, it's definitely getting there. It just gotta take a little bit more time when it comes to, like these more conservative countries. But then like on the other side, like in meaning like in America and US, it's definitely a little bit more challenging when it comes to these inverse. So I think like the cycle is definitely flipped. So I thought it was very interesting. And
Yeah, there's a lot of US teams that are also making Web3 games, but I think that they're probably going to be targeting Asian gamer audiences first because the American audience is super fickle when it comes to kind of new, I would say, new like new gameplay or like business models in gameplay, right? Like America was kind of behind on free to play as well, and I expect them to be behind on Web3 because there's a real emphasis in the US over just the gameplay first, or don't let your monetization touch my gameplay. Whereas in Asia, there's a lot more openness to kind of mixing like innovations in business models and monetization with gameplay itself.
Actually, that's a very interesting discussion. I felt like, for that specific topic, we could just chat another hour. But I thought, like, for Web3 games, like, one thing that ourselves consider the most important gist of why people are coming to play using, the games that leveraging blockchain tech is because there's like a huge focus on strategic, I wouldn't say investment, but rather like something around like how do you game theories against each other and then try to be like kind of outsmart other people by using strategies. And then like that's really like where the fun part of Web3, like it's impossible to
absolutely
like like impossible to not include assets and trading because it's just part of the thing. And obviously, people we would actually even take an even further stand where for Gas Hero, for example, it's that people wanted to social with each other because they have something to exchange for. Like some people wanted fame, some people wanted power. How do I exchange with you? How do you leverage NFT as an infrastructure, right? All of these are based on, what we have built on top of blockchain. So I think it's almost like impossible. But it's interesting to hear you say that because I actually didn't really meet many like American teams. So it's one.
Yeah, if you look at the history of gaming, different kinds of technical innovations lead to different kinds of gameplay innovations as well, right? So first we had single player games, and usually like the first business model was arcade coin op, right? You had to pay your quarter upfront to play the game. Then when you lost 3 lives, then you had to pay another quarter, which is arguably a lot worse than free to play, right? Then you had to pay to experience the home game. Then you had shareware where you experienced the first few levels for free. Then you had to mail in a check to like get the rest of the game. And of course, we've covered free to play where you get the game for free and you basically buy the items. And now with blockchain, the items themselves are permanent assets that have economic value, which really lends itself more to economic innovations in gameplay. It's not really going to affect your core game loop. You're not going to shoot better because of NFTs, but it is going to change the way that assets are managed or how players care about the assets that are inside the game.
Yeah, for sure. I think one thing that people learn a lot from CSGO is that, it's an open market. Like even if people don't play, there's a group of people who are actually just speculating all the assets or just collecting versus like there's a group of people just playing. And I think crypto or blockchain based games actually further enhance that experience where you have an open market for everyone to participate and you can introduce a lot more external capital to really make the whole kind of game theory more interesting because there's now like another player within the thing where you have to consider as also like a big market force. So actually I think that kind of also added some strategic component as well. If you don't have anything on this topic, I actually wanted to ask you one or two last questions. So first of all,
Sure.
That's something that I'm sure you would have some interesting observation on, which is like what chain are you seeing most of the games deploying themselves on?
Okay, so this is an interesting question. I'd say first off that there is no one chain for games. YG itself is a horizontal platform, meaning that we go where the games are, which means that, for example, for Ronin, it's Axie. For Arbitrum and Treasure DAO, it's Mighty Action Heroes. Hi, Simon. For Polygon and Immutable, there's a bunch of games. Block Lords is one of them. Guild of Guardians is another. So what we're seeing are kind of different native tribes that are forming around different chain ecosystems. And honestly, I'm not sure how this shakes out. Solana obviously has a lot of games on it as well. My gut sense is that it will be the game that makes the chain and not the other way around, meaning that the game that will be a big hit and onboard lots of users will kind of make the underlying chain as the gaming chain. And there's like the chain itself will not be like the number one gaming chain because of its technical features. It's going to be the game, right? In the same way that Steam as a platform happened because of Half-Life and not the other way around. So I'm not betting on one particular chain. However, there are those that have made themselves particularly friendly for gamers. Yeah, again, Solana is one of them. Ronin is another. Arbitrum, because of Treasure DAO, is one of those as well. I know that Base, the coming chain by Coinbase, is also gearing up to be game developer friendly as well. So yeah, and obviously there's Immutable and on top of Polygon that has really been focusing on the games from day one. So yeah, there's a bunch for developers to choose from.
Yeah, you know what? I think it's really interesting you mentioned this, like, the app make the chain, because although it sounds like, a little bit of bragging, but definitely we felt like we brought a lot of new users to Solana in the early days of StepIn. So we definitely felt very proud about it. But I think at the same time for Gas Hero, another component that we need to consider was around, like I think I mentioned earlier, about user onboarding. Like, how do you make sure that people don't have to go through the friction of registering a wallet and then storing all the C phrases or whatever, right? So I think either the MPC wallet or account abstraction wallet will be the right solution, but then it's only available for EVM. So I think that's another aspect that a lot of builders will consider. Definitely quite interesting to observe. Are there any other thing that you would like to maybe talk about that I didn't get to discuss before we close the stage?
Well, I guess in general, I'm really excited about what's coming in the next 12 months. All of you who are here today, hopefully you've all survived the last couple of years in whatever form. A lot of us are building in one way or another. It's really great for me to see a lot of people who've stuck out in this market and are still innovating with new products, new applications. Definitely Gas Hero is one of them. There's a bunch more people building really cool stuff that I can see right now in this space. And yeah, that's just really what gives me hope for the future. I think that it's really applications that's going to drive crypto adoption. And yeah, I can't wait to see what the next couple of years brings for all of us.
That's so true. This conversation reminds me of that photo that when we all met together, like after 3 years of COVID, yourself and then myself, and I think Sebastian from Sandbox, or also like Jiho from Axie, and also Steve Lee. That photo we took, I think it's absolutely, the reconvene of OG, and I'm sure you're hoping to see a lot
Still
more.
around.
Exactly. That definitely warms people's heart. Thank you so much. I guess before I close, I will share the Zealy Quest password for people who are still staying here. You're all looking forward to this, I know. So the password is Yield Guild, which spelled as capitalized YIELD, capitalized Guild, capitalized GUILD. I think I spoke it clear, so I won't repeat again, but there's no space between yield and guild. Thank you so much all for joining us today, and thank you so much, Gabby, for taking the time. It was such a pleasure talking to you.
Thanks for having me, Mabel. It's a lot of fun.
Thank you. Same here.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.